The Eagles take on the Dallas Cowboys this week. Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City has covered the Birds for over 20 years, Dave, so that means you've been at over 50 of these Eagles-Cowboys matchups.
It's always an interesting rivalry, one of the more intense ones in the NFL, although it's probably more one-sided from the Eagles' standpoint. They seem to have a hatred for the Cowboys, and the Cowboys pretty much, I don't think they care that much.
That's typically what you hear, but this one, and the last couple of years, it seems like, save for really last year, there have been some meaningful games. You know, they had the game at a couple of years ago, Sunday Night Football. That was for the playoffs. You've had a lot of games on Thanksgiving. They played a couple of years ago. Sanchez beats them. I mean, we've had some meaningful games here, but this one here seems like the winner is really going to have a good feeling about where their season is.
Yeah, I mean, both of them are in contention for first place in the NFC East, with the Cowboys kind of holding the top spot currently. But like you said, if the Eagles can pull off the win on Sunday night, you know, they'll both be tied at 5-2, but the Eagles will have that tiebreaker advantage. And I would think you'd have to consider both those teams among like the contenders to go to the Super Bowl for the NFC at that point.
I want to get some thoughts from you, Dave, as we get ready for this game. But first, there's the trade deadline is coming up, and today, are you buying what Doug Peterson's trying to sell today, that the Eagles aren't talking about an upgrade at that wide receiver spot?
I'm sure that Howie's having some conversations with those teams. I tend to think that maybe the asking price is too high. I'm not sure I would be that interested in Torrey Smith. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey certainly, but I think Peterson has said what he has to say almost. I mean, he can't put any doubt in the receivers that he has here now, because in case some deal doesn't come through and he has to count on them. So he's pretty much just playing a good soldier and trying to pump those guys up as much as he can. But I'd be surprised if they're not at least having some conversations with those teams.
Yeah, it seems like this time of the year, the trade deadline in the NFL doesn't get a lot of publicity. You don't see a heck of a lot of trades. However, would you be surprised if Howie Roseman, even if it's not wide receiver, does something by Tuesday?
No, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's known as a wheeler-dealer kind of guy. He's not afraid to pull the trigger on something if he thinks it's going to help the team, whether it's a starter or more often from a depth perspective. They haven't had a whole lot of injuries to this point, so I don't know how much they really need. I would think maybe a defensive back would come in handy now that Ron Brooks is out for the year. Maybe provides a little bit more depth on that defensive line too, but and the offensive line for that matter. I wouldn't be surprised if he finds somebody. I don't know if it'd be like a star, but somebody that actually could help the team from a depth perspective is certainly a possibility.
Dave, you mentioned how Brooks is out for the year. How much does that hurt their defense?
A lot, I think. It all depends on who they're going to play in the slot. I'm not real sure who that's going to be, because it seems like they have a lot of outside corners and they're afraid to move somebody inside. Eric Rowe would have been the perfect fit, obviously, but he's no longer here. So, with Ron out, he was kind of their reliable guy, in the slot. So now that he's gone, I'm kind of wondering who they're going to use to replace him.
And is he kind of an underrated guy, a guy that flew under the radar for a lot of people?
Yeah, because he was kind of like a third or fourth guy in Buffalo, and all the attention was put on Leotis McKelvin when they signed him, and Nolan Carroll solidified the other outside spot. So yeah, he's a guy who not a whole lot of people paid attention to, I don't think, but now that he's hurt, I think they're gonna find out just how valuable he was.
Dave Weinberg, Press of Atlantic City's with us. Beat kind of hitting on that defensive side of the ball. I want to stay there because, Dave, for the last 2 weeks, we've been asking about what's going on with Jim Schwartz's defense, people running all over them. And then last week, a lot of times coaches get criticized, Dave, because they're stubborn and they don't want to make changes. They want to do what they want to do. You got to give Jim Schwartz a lot of credit for doing something he doesn't typically like to do, which is put some pressure with the blitz.
Yeah, that's true. He adapted well, I thought. He knew that. I guess he knew, having Sam Bradford here during training camp, that if you can put some pressure on him, you can rattle him a little bit. Make some plays, make some throws that he doesn't normally want to make. And to be honest, he had to do that because Bradford's so good at getting rid of the ball so fast that he had to find another way. And their front four hasn't been getting to the quarterback too well. So I think he needed to bring extra guys, and it certainly worked out in his favor.
Talking with Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic Cities. We talk a little Eagles football, Eagles in Dallas this week. How about the play of Brandon Graham, his story, first-round pick, and he had been criticized, but now it seems like he's one of the top guys in the NFL at defensive end.
Yeah, he's really been a pleasant surprise for some people. I've always been a little bit higher on Brandon than other guys. I always thought that maybe Billy Davis's system really didn't work too well to his playing style, but Jim Schwartz's wide nine does. I always thought that he would be like a pretty good pass rusher and actually an all-around kind of defensive end if you just put him in the right positions. He had the unfortunate situation of just being a first-round pick in a draft where Jason Pierre-Paul got off to such a great start. Everybody wanted to compare him to him, but now that he's his own person and he's making a name for himself, and it's really nice to see. Like you said, he's probably in line for a potential Pro Bowl berth, I think.
So it looks like no Bennie Logan again potentially this week. How do you think that affects things on the defensive side of the football?
That hurts a lot. That might hurt more than anything, only because the Dallas offensive line is so good, and they provide such a great front wall for Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott both. It's kind of funny that comes up because Bennie Logan would always insist that the offensive line isn't as good as everybody's making him out to be, and that the Eagles would kind of expose him a little bit. And they did last year, mainly because of Logan. But now that he's not there, it's going to be kind of tough with Bo. Bo Allen had a nice game against Minnesota, but Dallas's offensive line is in a whole other ball game, and so is Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, he's not Mataseta or any of those other Vikings running backs, so it's going to be interesting to see how they figure out how to stop those guys.
Dave Weinberg, Press of Atlantic City. Eagles Cowboys Sunday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. And you mentioned Logan being out, and they want to run the ball. How about the Eagles linebackers, though? I saw Jordan Hicks 11 tackles in the game, and that was really the first game where he kind of did something or stood out statistically and or making a play that stood out. It seems that this was the first week that he looked more comfortable. Remember, he was a 3-4 inside backer. Now he's a 4-3 middle backer. A little difference.
Yeah. I think he's kind of, like you've mentioned, getting more comfortable in his role, kind of taking the Jim Schwartz's scheme and realize what's expected of him. And it seemed like Jim kind of gave him more opportunities to make plays, too. As they had in the first couple of games, they seem to be rotating an awful lot. Giving Stephen Tulloch a chance to play a little bit, but now it seems like Tulloch is kind of more of a backup kind of guy. I think they realize that Jordan is the future at middle linebacker, and giving him more opportunities to make plays. And he showed last year before he got hurt that he's always around the ball, always able to make a big play, especially against Dallas. I mean, he knocked Romo out for the year last year and returned that interception 67 yards for a touchdown when they played in Dallas last season too. So I would expect him to have a big game on Sunday night. He seems to always play well against the Cowboys.
Yeah, he was last year in that role as the inside backer, Dave. It seemed like, number one, he was a surprise because, remember, he was criticized when they drafted him in the third round. But he seemed like he either had an interception, a fumble recovery, a forced fumble, a tackle for loss. He seemed like he was constantly making a play in a game, and it seemed like that has been kind of neglected now as a 4-3 middle backer, where you are kind of the, hey, get your face mask up in the chest and make a tackle, that wide nine, whereas, hey, Marcus Smith last week, give him some credit. He set the edge on some plays that turned the running back upfield, which means your middle backer needs to be there to fill that hole and make tackles, and this is the first game where he had those double-digit tackles.
Right. I mean, I'm not ready to compare him to Jeremiah Trotter just yet.
No.
And he's got to put on some weight, too. I don't think he's probably maybe like 230 or so. If he wants to, stay in the middle and be that run stuffer that you really need, he's going to have to get a little bit heavier and stronger. But like you said, he has that innate ability to be around the football, and that's an underrated trait for a defensive player. There's not a whole lot of guys that do that. I think Rodney McLeod's one of them, too. They always seem to know where the ball's going to be, and whenever you need a big play, they seem to be the guys that make it. And as long as you have that, then you're going to last in this league for a long time.
Hey, Dave, before we dig a little deeper into the offense and this football game coming up, how about Dave Phipp and the job that he's done? Josh Huff returned for a touchdown. Wendell Smallwood returned for a touchdown. Special teams a factor all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been that way. Even if you go back to John Harbaugh being when he was the special teams coordinator under Andy Reid, they've always had really good special teams play. And it's not just like Huff and Smallwood, too. I mean, Darren Sproles was obviously one of the best punt returners in the league. And you can't underestimate, like, the job, like, say, Donnie Jones does as a punter, or even John Dornbos as a long snapper, or the core guys like Chris Maragos and Brian Bremen. Their blocks and stuff, they make it possible for guys like Huff and Smallwood and Sproles to excel. So, yeah, I got to give Dave Phipp a lot of credit, too. He's not a big talker. He doesn't like to discuss his role too much, but it's clear that he's got the right guys, and he always puts them in the right positions to make plays.
Yeah, and, PT's right. They have the only 2 kickoff returns in the league, happened to back-to-back week. And maybe, as you said, Dave, maybe they have been good special teams. Even with Chip a couple of years ago, they were pretty good. In fact, I think in 2013, maybe his first season here, it seemed like they were constantly getting a special teams touchdown or a defensive touchdown. But I think now we're starting to take notice because Chip is gone and Phipp is still the guy, that maybe it's Phipp that's pretty good, right? That he is the guy that should be getting this credit.
Yeah, that says a lot when there's a change in personnel and the coaching staff. When they retain a guy from a previous regime, that tells you that they really think a lot of him. He was one of the few that stayed around. Deuce Staley, I guess, was another one. A couple other guys, and Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach. So, yeah, we know they don't completely clean house. When they decide that you're worth, keeping around, then that tells you that they value pretty high. They value you pretty highly.
All right, let's look on the offensive side of the ball in this game, Dave, because you got 2 rookie quarterbacks here. You got Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, and a lot of times if you're meeting at this stage of the game with a rookie quarterback, you're probably not having that good of a season. But what do these 2 quarterbacks mean to these 2 teams in their early season success?
Well, honestly, I think Wentz probably means more, only because he's asked to do a little bit more. When you have a guy like Ezekiel Elliott back there with you, and you have a veteran offensive line, and you have weapons like Jason Witten and Cole Beasley, you don't have to quite do – I mean, I don't want to take anything what Dak Prescott has done. He's had a sensational year, and I think he might be he's probably having a better year than Carson is, but I think that's only because of the supporting cast around him. Carson doesn't seem to have that. Like the fact that they're even talking about trading for a receiver tells you that they really don't think all that highly of most of the guys they have there. Running game's been inconsistent. Injuries and suspensions on the offensive line. The fact that Carson's been able to overcome all that. I mean, he had a pretty shaky game against Minnesota, but that's one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best. So the fact that they're 4-2 at this point with him and what they have around him, I think that's pretty impressive.
Eagles back on the practice field today as they get ready for Dallas on Sunday night. And how about your thoughts, Dave, on Peterson saying that Aguilar and Huff are 2 guys that can take the top off of defense? I mean, are you buying that?
I don't know what they can take the top off, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm a little surprised that he mentioned Bryce Treggs, who hasn't even gotten on the field yet. So, I'm a little shocked that he didn't mention DGB. I thought he's the guy that can really, stretch defenses. And Aguilar and Huff, they got to find a way to just catch the football and maybe get some yards after the catch when they have the opportunity. Because to be honest with you, I think Aguilar especially, he's been a disappointment to this point. So, yeah, I guess maybe he was just trying to throw them a bone, so to speak, maybe pump up their confidence a little bit. But, yeah, I was a little surprised that he mentioned that.
Well, and I guess Jordan Matthews was asked about the receiver position, and he said, quite frankly, we're not scaring anybody. Nobody's afraid of us right now. They're not threatened by us. Yeah,
why would you be? I mean, they really haven't done anything, to be honest with you. They haven't made any, huge plays to this point. And even the tight ends were supposed to be this huge big factor in the offense. None of those guys I think they have 8 catches between them in the last 3 games or something like that. So they're not exactly lighting it up either. So it's kind of time for, I think part of it might be the way the offense is designed too. It doesn't look like Peterson is putting Carson in any risky situations. There's a lot of short intermediate passes. trying to rely on the running game a little bit. But there's going to come a time where they're going to have to air it out and see if those receivers can really make plays and make defenses respect them. And Jordan's right, to this point, they haven't done that.
Hey, Dave, this team, Dallas, you mentioned the offensive line and how good they've been. They've also got the kid Elliott, who's a rookie running back, over 700 yards in 6 games so far. Do you think, the way the Eagles, they stopped the run last week, they stopped the run early in the season, but they did show some problems. Is this running attack of Dallas a bad matchup for Jim Schwartz's defense, or do you think you'll see a lot more run blitzing this week? Something we haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of either.
It's kind of pick your poison, because if they do that, they might be able to contain Elliott, but don't forget Des Bryant's going to be back this weekend, supposedly. So that adds another element to the passing game that they haven't had. And I honestly think it's a bad matchup for them. I mean, Dallas has the number 1 ranked rushing offense in the league, and the Eagles really haven't seen anybody at their level yet. So I have a feeling that because Logan's not in there, I got a feeling that Elliott's going to have a pretty big game.
Yeah, that's Bo Allen, and they brought in Taylor Hart back from the 49ers. He was here, then gone, now back. And they didn't do anything in the secondary to replace Ron Brooks at this point, right? So it would seem that Jenkins would be that guy. And we talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show, that Jenkins is good when he's up against a slot guy who's more physical. But when he's up against one of those quicker guys like a Cole Beasley, he really seems to struggle in that kind of matchup.
Yeah, because Malcolm's a pretty physical guy. That's why he plays safety instead of corner, even though he's a pretty good corner at Ohio State too. But, yeah, he's going to have his hands full. Like you said, he's pretty good at matching up with bigger physical guys, because that's his strength. He's just as big as physical as those guys too. He's going to have to find a way to jam Beasley, not let him get out on his route. Knock him off his stride, knock him off his timing a little bit, and that'll maybe force Prescott to hold on to the ball a little bit too much. I got a feeling they might want to try. I mean, I know they're going to use Jenkins, but it seems like C.J. Smith might be the guy who eventually steps in there as soon as he gets his feet under him a little bit and gets used to playing in the NFL.
Well, Dave, Mike alluded to it that you've seen a lot of Eagles and Cowboys rivalry games and football games over your career. Do you have any favorite stories or games that jump out to you from your time on the beat?
Oh, gosh, there's so many. I'll never forget being there on a Monday night game when I'm going back a ways. I'm going to when Ray Rhodes was the coach. And they were driving down the field, and Chris Bonio, who had played for the Cowboys and been playing for the Eagles, had a easy chip shot field goal to win the game. I believe the snap got messed up.
Right.
Yes.
If I'm right.
Yep.
Yeah, Tom Hutton was the punter.
That's right.
And he was the holder. He dropped the snap, and from what I remember, they were almost going to make Hutton walk back from Dallas. They weren't even going to let him on the plane.
Dave,
But there's so many of them, especially when Buddy Ryan was here. All the snowball games with Jimmy Johnson and the pork chop bowl and all that kind of stuff. Seems like there's one every year that you kind of remember.
Yeah, were you on the beat when the Scabs played, and then when Randall and Buddy was there and they ran up the score?
Take the knee down.
Yep. Were you there?
I was not the main guy. I was there though. Yeah, we had a guy named Ed Hilt who was the main Eagles guy, and I was his backup. I was the guy who wrote the sidebars and stuff. But yeah, I do remember having to.
Oh, the good old days. 2 staff writers at the same game.
Yeah, how about that?
But that is one that is one that really kind of ignited the rivalry when it was becoming kind of stagnant there. But Buddy kind of brought it back, and we know Buddy just passed recently. But I know that some of the games that you had to be a part of early in your tenure on this beat had to be pretty wild. The Barry Switzer game, where they go for it on 4th again, and. Correct me if I'm wrong, because
right on that one.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I kind of got my years mixed up yesterday. Peterson's first win as an Eagles quarterback was against Dallas.
You might be right. I don't know. It was 99 was his only year playing here, so it could be right. I haven't really checked it out. But
they were 0-4. They were 0-4. He beat the Cowboys 20-13 or 13-10. In that game. And then the next year, on the year 2000, to open the season, was the pickle juice game where they opened up the season with a can of the old whoop.
That one I remember.
And that was really
Rick Burkhardt became famous for that. Boy, he soaked that up for all it was worth about how he designed. He did that pickle juice kind of wards off dehydration better than Gatorade and water. Yeah, I'll never forget that. I remember it was hot as heck there too. It was like on the field, it was like 140 degrees or some such nonsense. It was amazing.
That was in the old stadium, right?
Yeah, and Andy began the season with an onside kick.
That's
Let
right.
alone just the game.
But you keep in mind, not to really go back to that era, but this is kind of Doug trying to kickstart his team. Andy was 5-11 that second year. There was not a lot of expectations for that team, but they came out on opening day and did that, and it really springboarded them. They ended up going to the NFC Championship game that year.
No, the next year.
The next year, right? No, they played the Rams the next year. That year though, they went 11-5, right?
Yeah, I think they didn't make the playoffs. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yep. So this
that
could
was
be
like the dawn of Donovan McNabb's era too. Yep.
That's right. This could be a springboard type of game for Doug Peterson in terms of getting that NFC East win against the Cowboys. It's Sunday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. He's seen a lot of these games. I estimate over 50, Dave. When you throw playoff games in there too, you've seen these two teams play over 50 times, and they'll renew that this Sunday night. Dave, it's always a pleasure, pal. Enjoy the game.
Gee, thanks for reminding me how old I am.
You're only as old as you feel, pal.
Here's the 50 more matchups for you, pal.
Yeah, there you go.
Take care, Dave.
All right, thanks, guys.